So you have heard me talk about this in the past. Rent control. You gotta love it when the government gets involved, because I've shared this many times, and I'm not gonna put my guests on with this thought process that I have. We've got David and Chip here from the Apartment Association of Orange County, but I've shared with you many, many times. Elected officials go to do something. If it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. They just have to say, we did something. Because generally, somebody might benefit. Well, this dumb thing that they're doing with rent control, I'm trying to find who it is that benefits. So maybe our guest this morning can help me with that. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Ron.
Morning.
So tell me a little bit before we get into the nuts and bolts. Tell me a little bit about the Apartment Association of Orange County.
All right. Well, the Apartment Association of Orange County has been in existence since 1961 as a resource for income property owners and operators here, not only in Orange County, but also into parts of Riverside County as well. If you are a landlord who has operational questions, landlord-tenant questions, we can be your source of information and guidance to work you through the situations you might be dealing with as you're working with your tenants on whatever the issue may be. We don't do legal advice. We could always refer you to attorneys who specialize in landlord-tenant law. But as far as day-to-day issues, our association is there to be a resource to those landlords who are looking for answers.
So you can probably tell me when I needed an attorney.
We could probably tell you that. Yeah, absolutely.
You need to go to an attorney right now. And be aware, I do radio every day. So, there are people that hate me. you wouldn't know. You would never know it, would you? So let's chat about this thing that's going on, because I've said that as an investor, the last place in the world that I'd want to buy real estate for investment purposes is Los Angeles County. I can't evict anybody, from what I understand. I can't raise my rents the way I want to, or if I want to do it, I got to raise them more right now, because next year I might not be able to raise them as much as I need to. Mm-hmm. Is that really am I on the right track there?
I think you're definitely on the right track. What we see is rent control oftentimes works against the very notion of what those that are implementing it are seeking to do, which is to help renters struggling through difficult financial times. Rent control almost forces maximum rent increases on an annual basis, simply for the landlord to be able to keep up with their own operational expenses and making sure that they continue to operate a property which is well maintained and certainly providing the type of quality of life that their tenants are expecting.
Do you think it's going to push people to investors to say, something, I don't want to be a landlord, and then the people who don't have housing?
Well, I'll tell you, the number of rental housing providers who are second guessing their futures in the industry increases every time there's a new proposal, whether it's rent control or some other type of legislation that is going to make things more difficult for them to operate their business. And I think there's a lot of folks that are really looking at the long-term holding of their properties and trying to decide, is this something I'm up for? Can I continue to operate this the way that I feel I should be able to, which is as a small business owner? And
that was the next question I was going to ask you, is that, when you would have a better handle on something like this, is the landlords, is it the major corporations for the most part, or is it mom and pop who have one or two rental properties or three for their future?
Well, I think when you look at rent control, it hurts everybody industry-wide. The depth of the damage that is done, however, is most often felt by those that are, the mom and pop operators of rental units. Usually, 16 units or less is kind of what is viewed as mom and pop. They're the ones who take the hardest hit because they have the smallest margin when it comes to operating their businesses. The larger property management company and institution owners, they have the ability to kind of, spread out some of the pain and the financial impact. And so, they still deal with it, but the direct hit that they take is not felt quite the same.
Now, one of the questions that I should have asked you before, because it almost sounds like if I was I guess I am an individual, but looking at the name of your organization, it seems like it's more limiting than what you just described, because it says Apartment Association. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you really deal with more than just apartments.
Absolutely. We certainly engage on a number of real estate related issues and specifically rental housing issues. Our membership is comprised of apartment owners as well as individuals who own and operate single family homes as rentals as well. So we really are a place where anyone who's involved in the rental industry can come and receive benefits and representation at the local and state levels on rent control policies and other legislation. We do serve a lot of purposes that are beneficial to folks industry wide.
So it's more encompassing than apartments.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening and you say, well, I don't own apartments, so I can't get help here. No, that's not correct. You can actually give a call or reach out to the association, and they are there as a resource for more than just apartment owners. We're going to continue our conversation. We have David and Chip with us from the Apartment Association of Orange County, talking about government intervention or attempted government intervention, and who does it benefit? So being that they do have the letters OC in their website, AAOC, that means they're probably doing some stuff in Orange County. Maybe they expand a little further, but that is still part of the formerly Golden State. So we are dealing with, we got to deal with some of these things. And we love the government to do everything for us in California. I don't know why, but we seem to like that. Not on Ron Siegel Radio. But I guess there's a lawsuit coming out, or some Orange County is now getting into this rent control. Tell me a little bit about what the cities in Orange County might have in mind.
Yeah, so this started a couple of years ago. City of Santa Ana came up with their wonderful ideas of how
City of Santa Ana. Really? That's
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
That's a good way of putting it there, private pile. Yeah, they came out a couple of years ago and they started deciding that they were going to help out the housing industry. And the solutions that they came up with, and let's start with the basic concept of economics, supply and demand.
Oh, economics 101.
Yeah, very, very basic. So they decided, let's make it more expensive to build anything new by putting in a bunch of regulations requiring increased costs to labor costs and things like that, beyond what even the labor councils wanted. And you might be surprised by this, by increasing that cost, they were able to build more houses or less houses. What do you think?
My guess is less.
You're pretty good at this.
Bingo.
And then they decided that they were going to say, let's take on the rental industry. And what we're going to do there is we're going to limit the rents there. Now, let's try that one more time. Do you think that encouraged more people to come in and be renters or build rental properties or less?
My guess is again less.
Yeah, you're good at this one. Nothing's been built since then. I mean, there's stuff being built, but that's been in plans for multiple years. Nothing's getting pulled to get built now. So they came up with these plans to try to assist the housing industry, and it's working out exactly as we would have expected and exactly as you nailed it. Nothing's getting built. Nobody wants to own in there. You talk to the brokers, their people want to sell out of Santa Ana. Very few people want to buy into it. Investors are looking at every other city, except for those who maybe have had rumblings about rent control, and they're looking away from those cities too. So the only one that's actually done it is Santa Ana. A couple other cities have had rumblings about it, but it seems like they're following what's happening in Santa Ana and saying this may not be the fit for us.
Now, I think Josh has been able to pull this slide for us, but we've talked about this before. What's happening in general in rental prices around the country? Well, we've shared this slide with you before. Josh, do we have that? If you're watching us on RonSiegelRadio.tv, any of our socials, or the ABC News and Talk AM 1490 video feed. Median asking rent since 1988. Now, as we start looking at all these different issues about rent control, just in general, I mean, the vast majority of the country doesn't have rent control, and look what's going on with rents. Right? I used to say when I was younger, that was way back when, that the chart looked like the bunny slope. Now, because I am old, I didn't even know this. One of our guests recently told me that what they call this black diamond, right? The chart goes straight up. That's what's happening with rents without government intervention. Do you think that government intervention is going to help anything? Does government intervention ever help anything? Just throw that out there. So if you're watching us, again, you've got the chart right there. Thanks, Josh. I'm glad I can throw these things at him really late in the middle of a broadcast, and he's still able to get it for us. But, kind of see that that's what's happened in general. And now economics 101, if you're going to diminish the supply, price is going to go up.
And that is exactly what we're seeing, especially when you cap the future growth, which is what rent control does. You can only raise the rents a certain amount. If you're a landlord, you're a property owner, you're looking to what your future is, and your costs are going through the roof, your insurance is going up, everything else is going up for you. You're going to go to the absolute limit you can because you don't know what tomorrow holds. And if you let it go now, you'll never catch up.
Yeah.
So do you have data? And I don't want to put you on the spot on this because I didn't even ask you ahead of. What was a normal or a rough idea without rent control? What would people normally increase their rents on a yearly basis?
That is something that would, each individual operator has to make a decision as far as
Right.
what fits their model. I think a lot of times you may see 3 to 5%
That's
annually.
what I was going to guess is 3 to 5.
And back in 2020, a new law took effect in California, which basically statewide capped rent increases at no more than 10% per year. What we're looking at Santa Ana, the city council adopted back in October of 2021, and in an amended ordinance back in October 2022, they capped the rent increase on an annual basis to no more than 3% or 80% of the change in CPI over the previous year.
Whichever is lower.
Whichever is lower.
Whichever is lower.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So, we are looking now at a situation in Santa Ana where if rents can only increase a maximum of 3%, that's not even keeping up with the rate of inflation. You add on top of that, as Chip was talking, the added costs of insurance for rental properties, and the costs that we're all paying now because of inflation for materials, and it stops being something that is a business that can be successfully operated. And
well, I'm just a simple guy here. And I'm looking right now that I could own a piece of property that I can rent, hopefully, with a 3% increase, or I can go into the 10-year treasury and get 3.445. Let's see. Do I really need to contemplate this for a long period of time? Yeah, no, we're not going to contemplate that very long, because if I could put money in the treasury and not have work to do, because if you're a landowner, there's work involved.
Absolutely.
Right? You're gonna have to answer those phone calls at whatever time that the toilet flooded, or there was a slab leak, or we haven't had any rain in California lately, so there could be a roof leak. Maybe you need a new roof. Right? Those are all expenses, and they're expensive.
Absolutely. And when you can't put money away because you've got such a narrow margin at that point, a lot of the preventative maintenance and repairs that landlords would often put money away for, there's less money now coming in to be able to put toward those big ticket items.
I was chatting with somebody yesterday, and they were sharing that they were looking to do some home improvements. They're going to put an ADU on their house, an additional dwelling unit. And they were really excited because their bank offered them a 9% home equity line of credit, which is adjustable and probably went up yesterday or today because of the Fed's actions. So if you don't have the money set aside for that new roof, which is anywhere on the cheapest side, I've heard $10,000, could be up $40,000, $50,000 or more depending upon the size of the property, and you have to go out and borrow that money. Well, don't go to Silicon Valley Bank because they're not lending anymore. But the bottom line is you're paying a lot of money for it, and then you can't even get your money back.
Yeah, and it's in the original ordinance actually allowed property owners to make those kind of repairs and then be able to bring their rates up to market. And when property owners started taking advantage of that, the city decided, no, well, we don't want to do that. We want to take that right on out. So they even took away the incentive to improve their properties.
So we get to have, because of the states helping us, we get to have inferior properties to live in.
Exactly. And actually they made it, you'll appreciate the way they decided to handle it. Now what they want to do is, if you're going to make the upgrades to your property, you want to be able to raise rents along with it, you go through, you pay for it, you implement the properties, then you go to the city of Santa Ana and ask them if it would be all right if you could raise your rents, and they'll let you know whether or not you can and how much.
After
Or
the fact.
maybe you should lower your rents. They could offer that to you
Yeah,
as well.
because the rent control ordinance also includes provision where they establish a rent board in Santa Ana, which is going to already, by its very composition, put the rental housing provider at a disadvantage.
Just what I want is to have to go and ask somebody else after I've spent money, hey, can I raise my rent? Can I change my business model or make changes to benefit the business?
Well, not to mention,
Yeah.
who's going to lend on that? Please give me money for the possibility that the city will let me get a return on it.
Yeah, maybe you can go to First Republic. No, we won't. Continue our conversation. We are chatting with our friends over here at the Apartment Association of Orange County. David and Chip are in. We're chatting about government. Rent control. The government's here to help. Those famous words that Ronald Reagan warned us about. So you're saying that there's a lawsuit now on this too? Tell us a little bit about loss. Who they file? You got to have standing.
So there's two different types of lawsuits that can go on something like this.
Okay.
And this is actually the first time in the history of this organization that we have sued a city. Because every other time we've had an issue or a disagreement, we've been able to come to the table and work it out. We tried that repeatedly through 2020, 2021, 2022. And
well, nobody could go to a table in 21 and 22. That was all COVID. You had to stay home.
a Zoom table. How's
Okay.
that?
Gotcha.
And we came to the decision that what we needed to do here, if they're not going to listen, is we are going to have to file suit. And you're right. If there's damages, you have to have standing. But if there's a problem with the law, anybody can bring that forward.
Okay.
And within the statute of limitations, which I think was 18 months from, it was 3 months from the final implementation.
Yes.
3 months from the final implementation, which was in November of 22. We could file suit. So we contacted our good friends at Rattan and Tucker, who are a phenomenal law firm, Orange County based history
In Santa Ana.
in Santa Ana.
So they have firsthand knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, Mr. Rattan was actually one of the big families way back when in forming
The city.
the city. Yeah. So this is a longstanding law firm that actually has an expertise and is one up in Los Angeles County against rent control, rent registries, and these kinds of things in some of the lawsuits up there. So we went to them and said, you guys are the experts in this. This is your city. This is our county. Let's fix this.
They're experts in public policy.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that's that's the whole issue right
Yeah.
there.
I mean, they have a proven track record when it comes to, especially, complaints about, rent control and other, as you say, government intervention. They've been able to be, find success in other areas where maybe, firms in the past have not. And it was a no-brainer for us.
And
Yeah.
through cooperating with them and kind of going through the story of what we experienced here, where there were Brown Act violations, which for those of you that don't know, a government entity, a majority of people cannot meet without noticing the public so that they can't come up with deals in private.
Backroom deals. It's
Exactly.
the smoke-filled back room.
That's exactly what it's intended to stop. There were conflicts of interest. The city mayor at the time was a property owner who exempted his properties out of the rent control law.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, single family rentals versus a multifamily rental. And he's an owner of single family properties in the city of Santa Ana. Those were not included in this rent control ordinance.
And interestingly enough, he didn't choose to limit his rent increases to the same standard by which he put on everybody else. When it came time to raise rents, he went straight for what he could. And it's kind of a fun
Gotta
little
love
situation.
that, right?
Right. What's the old saying? It's rules for thee, but not for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So
We won't talk about that at the French Laundry for dinner with the mayor, with the governor, will we?
no, never,
Okay, we
never.
won't talk about that.
But it was a perfect example of them not even listening to what they believed was the best policy. But then beyond that, you take a look at things like the way the rent control board would be structured, which has a majority of renters set to it versus property owners.
Yeah, basically, you'd have 3 tenants serving on the 7-member board. You'd have 2 rental housing providers, and then you'd have 2 additional at-large members who would have no financial interest as a residential rental property operator or owner in the city. That's all good and fine, but typically you're going to find those people are not going to have a dog in that fight. They're probably going to side with whoever's complaining that the rent's too high, and therefore
or who appointed them.
or who appointed them. And that's the thing.
Or who's voting for the who appointed them.
Yeah, and each council member would have one appointment to make to this rent board. And given the the composition of the council ideologically right now, they're not going to be favorable to rental property owners and operators.
So you've already
Well, we
got
don't really want to. I'm not as concerned about which side they're. If you're favorable to one side or favorable to the other, the fact is it's going to hurt both sides.
well, you actually
and no one's educating that.
you should be concerned about that, because that is not due process. You're supposed to have a fair hearing, and if you
That makes sense,
structurally
yeah.
set something up biased one side or the other, there's not going to be a lot of confidence that your system's gone through. So we see that as a major problem. They also, like I said, made property ownership a qualification to serve on a public board. What other board can you think of where you have to own property in order to serve the public good? That is completely antithetical to everything we believe in democracy. We believe that one person, one voice, not one person who has property, one voice, or one person who doesn't have property, one voice.
Sure, which doesn't make any. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense because what isn't that called segregation?
There was a time.
Right? I mean, if you're not going to allow the people that renters on there, or if you're not allowing homeowners or investors on there, that's segregation. We want to have it where everybody's got an equal say. That's where our country's supposed to be found on.
Yeah, and this rent board has no balance. I mean, that's at the end of the day, you can't have a fair shot at having your situation determined if you have it stacked against you one way or the other.
When is this going to be heard? Do we know?
We don't know that. We filed in February. We filed on February 14th. It was our little
Valentine's
Day
gift to the city.
Yes.
Nice.
That was actually unintentional, but it's a fun little story now. But yeah, so we filed then. We're looking at possibly having to amend some of our filings, because some of the things we have found since that we mentioned here, things like being conflict of interest and problems like that came up since there. We expect it'll probably be heard in the next couple months.
Yeah, probably
June was like a target time.
Yeah,
frame.
late spring, early
Yeah.
summer is probably when we're expecting the first hearing to occur.
Well, that's good because obviously you want to make sure it gets taken care of before it's implemented. But I want to we got to move on because Josh is hollering at me. We only got about a minute left. You got an event coming up.
We do. Next Thursday, March 30th, we've got our rental housing trade show and conference. It's going to be at the Orange County Fair and Events Center from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. Admission is free. So for anyone who's interested in coming down, who's in the multifamily industry or the real estate industry, you get in for free. We're going to have free seminars, free exhibition training sessions for maintenance. And we've got probably about 115 exhibitors who are looking to do business with you if you are an owner or operator of rental housing property and do other business within the real estate industry.
Or if you're just interested in learning more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do I get more information about the apartment association?
Well, you can visit our website, www.aaoc.com. You can give us a call at 714-245-9500. And if you do visit our website and you believe that fighting rent control is important in Santa Ana, we can also have a donation online, and just look at the banner across the top of our webpage, and there's a link there you can donate online.
Great information. If you didn't get that while you're driving, don't write it while you're driving. But if you didn't get that, give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990.